It's Sarah, and today we are going to talk through all the books that I read in the month of June. Ended up being pretty good. I had a couple really quick reads that helped my numbers crank up a little bit, but I did read 6 novels and 2 short stories or novellas. And well, 1 short story, 1 novella. We'll put it that way. And yeah, so we will talk about what I read. It was a pretty good month. All right, the first one that I read was Wayward. This is by Amelia Hart. This is a debut novel, which blew my mind because I absolutely love this. I read this with my friend Jennifer, and we had a really great time reading and discussing it. Now, I listened to the audiobook narration of this one, and there are 3 narrators, so I'm going to read them to you. I wrote them down. So this is read by Aisha Kayla, Helen Keeley, and Nell Barlow. And there were 3 different timelines following 3 different characters. So we have Altha from 1619, we have Violet from 1942, and Kate from 2019. And we follow all 3 of these women and kind of how they end up eventually tying together. And it was fantastic. The writing was beautiful. I mean, this is an author I'm going to keep an eye out for because her writing was just so gorgeous. And I was surprised that this was a debut because it felt like a seasoned writer. But I loved all 3 timelines. If we switched timelines, I wasn't mad about it because I was interested in what was going on. Overall, I think my favorite was probably Violet's, which was in 1942. I was a little bit more invested in her story and what she was going through and things that were happening with her. But I loved the other 2 as well. So I wasn't upset when we got out of Violet's timeline by any means. I just felt a little bit more towards Violet as a character personally. But man, I mean, this is following the 3 different women and how they each are dealing with different types of prejudices against them, and mainly revolving around witchcraft and what different situations that they are in having to do with that type of stuff. And each one is very different, but it's the same kind of theme, but it's very differently for, each woman because of the different timelines that they're in. I will say that there are some definite content warnings in here for domestic abuse and for rape. So those are 2 things that are definitely involved in this book in one way or another. And it doesn't shy away. So if those are things that you can't read about, I would probably skip this one because those are definitely in here. But it was beautiful, gorgeous, loved it, 5 stars. One of my favorite reads this year so far. The next one is another 5-star read, another favorite of the year so far. And I did feature this in my most recent reading vlog, but that is Drowning by TJ Newman. And I rolled for our dice game for this one. And I could not put this down. I picked it up and read the first couple chapters one day. And then I think I missed a couple days of reading just in general, just because we were, busy doing some other stuff. And when I went back to it, I picked it up and I read the rest of the entire book in one sitting. I could not put it down. It was fantastic. There's another one that I listened to on audiobook. I got it from Libro FM. And the narrators for these, for this one is 2 different narrators again. So Stephen Weber was our main male narrator, and he is fantastic. He is an actor, and I have listened to a couple of books read by him, and he's phenomenal. So if he reads an audiobook, I'm going to listen to it basically. And then the female narrator was Laura Benatti, and she was great as well. So this one was just incredibly intense, nonstop action. Again, I couldn't put it down, and it made me cry. And I was blown away. I was not expecting that from this book at all, by any way, means, or form. I was afraid to read this book because this does follow a plane that goes down over the Pacific Ocean. It is flying from Hawaii to San Francisco, and mid-flight it goes down and lands in the water. And it's the rescue of this plane. And I was very nervous to read it because I am not a good flyer, and I will be flying in September. So I was a little bit scared to do that, but I'm so glad that I did. And maybe now I'm not afraid of flying books because I just could not put it down. I loved it so much. And even thinking about flying in September, I'm not freaking out. I'm not afraid as of right now. We'll see how we'll see how it goes when I actually get on the plane. But I have a few plane crash books that I've been kind of putting off because of that. And I think I'm going to maybe not put them off anymore because I just could not put this down. I thought it was just so great. So definitely going to read more from TJ Newman. This is only her second book. I do have her first book, which is Falling, which is another plane crash book. And I do plan to pick that one up as well. But she's an author I'm going to keep my eye out on. And she is a former flight attendant and a bookseller. She worked at Barnes & Noble, which is fun. So, yeah, but loved it. The next one that I read is the short story, and that one is All Roads Lead to Here by Abby Jimenez. This is a short story that she put out for her newsletter subscribers, which I am one of those. And it was just a fun short story that surrounds one of the side characters from Part of Your World and how this person meets their partner. And it was really cute. It was only 24 pages, I think, or something like that. It was very short. I read it on my phone because I just downloaded it. That's how you read it. And yeah, it was cute. It was fun. I think I gave it 4 stars. Like, it was adorable. It was Abby. So I loved it. Was it super necessary? No, but she also said that. She's like, this is just how these people meet. And we do know these people and where their relationship goes in Part of Your World. So it's just kind of like, well, and here's how they actually meet. The next book that I read was A Fatal Grace by Louise Penny. This is book number 2 in her Armand Gamache series. And I am doing a very loose read along with the creators of the Currently Reading podcast. They are doing deep dive episodes into this series, and they started from the beginning, obviously. So they had book number 1, they read it, they did an in-depth conversation podcast episode about it, and now I have read number 2. So the second installment is actually out now on the podcast, so I'm ready to listen to it. I haven't listened to it quite yet. And then I'll be moving on to book 3. So I'm kind of going along with them. There's not a set timeline for them, but I'm kind of just anticipating something coming out soonish. So I listened to this one. This one is read by Ralph Kosham. And this one, I will say I enjoyed more than the first book, which was Still Life. I enjoyed this one a little bit more. I liked where the story went a little bit more. Did I see the ending coming? I did predict what happened at the end. It wasn't super obvious, I think, but I was able to be like, I think this is what's happening here. And it was. So I'm not mad about that. But I did enjoy this one a little bit more. It did go a little bit darker, which I liked. It was still just a 3-star for me, though, because it wasn't completely captivating. It felt like a lot of filler in between, the things that were happening. And I don't know. It was just, I was like, okay. On to book 3. So I'm going to keep going, even though I'm not completely obsessed or captivated or whatever yet with the series. I know that I will get there because I have heard that, they get much better and better and better and all that stuff. So I do plan to keep going. But it was a 3-star and I did enjoy it better than the first one for sure. So yeah. And then I read House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. This is book number 2 in her Crescent City series. The first book has been my favorite of the year so far. Okay. I read this with Brittany from Rescues and Reads. And we had talked about reading this book together. And then we finally were like, let's just do it. And we did. When I tell you the messages going back and forth towards the end of this book was insane. We were just back and forth. So I don't want to give too much about this because this is book number 2 and it follows the occurrences, a couple months after this picks up a couple months after what happened in Crescent City. So I'm not going to go into the details at all. But we're following angels and fairies and all sorts of, magical stuff in this world. And at first, the first half of this felt like it was moving a little bit slower than the first book. I was like, okay, but it's fine. But everything was important. So I will say that. Like, I didn't feel like there was a whole lot of filler in here. I didn't feel like there was unnecessary stuff. I felt like everything we were learning was necessary and important. We get introduced to a couple more characters, which is good. And I really started loving Rune in this one. Like, I really kind of felt more of a connection to him as a character. So I loved that. And Hunt continues to be my book boyfriend. I will say the ending of this book, and if you've read it, you know exactly what I'm talking about, rocked me to my core. I finished this sitting on the couch with my husband was sitting next to me. He's playing the new Zelda game. So he was playing his game. I'm reading this book and I finished it and I sat up in the seat and I just looked at him and my mouth was hanging open. And he was like, "What?" I said, you're not going to understand." He's like, "Okay." So, Brittany and I were just back and forth. We were like, "Oh my God, blah, blah, blah. What does this mean?" Blah, blah, blah. Like, just insane. I need the next book now. It comes out in January 30th. I am fully prepared to say that I will be picking that book up when it comes out. I'm going to pick it up from work and I'm going to take it home and I'm going to start reading it because I need to know where this is going to go. Okay. I loved it. 5 stars. Loved it. Loved it. Okay, and then I read the Middle Grade March Book Club pick for the month of June, and that was The Parker Inheritance by Varian Johnson. This is one that actually Amanda sent to me for our Christmas book exchange last year, so I was very excited that it was a pick for their middle grade because I had the perfect excuse to pick it up and read it. So this is another one that I ended up listening to. I did start reading this physically, which was fine. I do like, there's different timelines that we're following, actually a couple different timelines. And I did like that the timelines had different colored pages. So we have black here, and then we go into just regular white. And then there are some gray pages as well. Just depending on what timeline you were in, you were going back and forth between the colors of the pages, which I thought was really unique and cool, and definitely something fun for middle graders, as they're reading through it. I did end up finishing it on audio, though. I think I read the first third of it physically, and then I switched to audio because I was finding myself not having a whole lot of time for sitting down and reading. It was more, audiobook was working better for me because I could listen, as I was doing some other things that I had to do. So I did switch. And the audiobook narrator was Charisse Booth, and she did a great job. It was a great narration for this book. So we are following a young girl who is living with her mother, and they end up moving back to the small town that her mother's family is originally from. And just kind of her acclimating into this new place with new people. And there's a little bit of a stigma on her family because her grandmother did something back in the day to the town that a lot of people are not over yet. And it involves kind of a treasure hunt type thing. So a lot of people thought that she was making things up and that she was tearing up the town, looking for this treasure when there really wasn't anything. And so it's a big stigma on her grandmother, and therefore a stigma on her and her family. And you are following, like I said, a couple different timelines. You do see her grandmother in one of the timelines, and then there's an even further back timeline that is kind of the beginning of all this stuff with the treasure hunt. And then this young girl and her friend find kind of some clues to what this treasure could possibly be / where it could possibly be. And so they're trying to figure this out because they both love puzzles and games, and they're like, thinking this could actually be a thing, and they're starting to connect some dots. And it was a lot of fun. So I did really enjoy this one. I gave it 4 stars. I liked watching them building their friendship and figuring out this stuff and, figuring it all out. The past timelines I thought were fine. This does deal heavily with racism because of the timeline and setting that this takes place in. So there is a lot of that in here. So there's that. And so I definitely preferred like the more current timeline with with our main character and her trying to find all this stuff. They also reference the Westing game a lot in this book, and now I want to read it, and I have it because someone had just recently gifted that to me. So now I'm kind of looking at that one like, now I think I want to read you, because they talk about that a lot in here, as far as like the ultimate puzzle book and stuff. So that was fun, but I did enjoy it. I'm glad I read it. I don't think it's one that I would hang on to for the long haul, to be honest, but I did really enjoy it. So the next one I read is a novella, and that is Inheritance by Catherine McGee. This is another one that was in my most recent reading vlog, and I rolled this for our Roll Your Next Read. And the prompt was to read a book with royalty in it plus a color. And I could interpret that however I wanted. So I chose this one because royalty, number one. And number two, the cover is blue, and that's my favorite color. So I kind of made both of those prompts work. So if you haven't seen my vlog, I will leave a link down below, because I kind of talk through a little bit more about that. But this is one that's part of the American Royals series, and I think there's a couple of novellas included in this series, and I haven't read any of them. So this one was a prequel. So this one is things that were happening prior to the first book, and you kind of see how things that you already know about came about, and takes place over one night. And it's in two different locations, just kind of some stuff that's happening. So while I did enjoy it and I gave it 4 stars, I also was listening to it going, but I know what happens now. But I know how the storyline goes because I've read the other 3 books in the series already. So there was that. So I think if you haven't read any of the American Royals, I think you could start with this one for sure, because it's going to lead up to what happens in the first book. But yeah, so that was the only kind of disconnect for me. I was like, but I know what happens between these two. You know? So it was interesting, but yeah, but it was fine. I'm definitely ready for book number 4, which comes out in August, which I just found out about, which was irritating because I definitely would have put that on my most anticipated list if I had heard about it before I filmed that video, but it's fine. It's fine. Okay, last book that I finished in the month of June is My Killer Vacation. This is by Tessa Bailey. This is another one that was in my most recent reading vlog. And I picked this up at a library sale not too long ago, and it was on my radar to read this summer because vacation, and it's like a summary book. Okay. I was picking this up thinking this is going to be just a really quick, quick fun read, which it was. It was. But I will say that I liked the characters. It was very, very, very steamy. Very steamy, you guys. I mean, you're not just in the bedroom, you're in the bed with them, steamy, or whatever location. They do it all over the place. But there is that. And definitely big time kind of dominating male, needs to protect her at all costs. And, you can't go anywhere without me because you won't be safe if you're not with me, blah, 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 whatever. And then her not listening. So there's that. There's also murder in here and them teaming up together to try to solve a murder. So there is that too. I enjoyed it. I gave it 3 stars just because, I don't know, it just wasn't like a new favorite. It wasn't unputdownable. It was fine. I was just kind of reading it just the whole time, just going, okay, all right. Okay, that happened. Okay, all right. Like I didn't have any feelings either way, if that makes any sense. I didn't have any strong feelings about it. But it was fun. It was something I read, got it off my shelves. I do want to read more Tessa Bailey because I do tend to really enjoy her books. And this one was it was fine. So it's read. Okay, now we're going to talk about 2 DNFs. So this first one I've already talked about in my 5-star predictions wrap up because I DNF'd it, and I had a whole lot to say about this one in that video. So if you haven't seen that, I will link that down below if you want to hear a little bit more. I won't go into spoiler details here the way that I did there. I did go into spoilers over there, and I gave you fair warning So if you want to see that, you can. But I DNF'd The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. I got exactly halfway through this book, and then I wanted to throw it across the room. So I put it down. So I didn't do the book any harm. This is the first book in the, what is it called? The Dreamland Billionaires series. There's 3 of them, and it follows 3 brothers who are set to inherit like a certain percentage of this theme park called Dreamland, which is basically Disney World. And upon their inheritance being read to them, they have to go through certain things in order to earn their inheritance. So they have to do certain tasks. And so this first one, we are reading about Rowan and what he has to do in order to get his inheritance. And then, of course, he meets Zara, who completely throws him off his game, and she's an employee at the park, and it goes from there. I was not buying their love story. I did not like Zara at all. And just the things that were happening in here and the characteristics of the characters felt like such a big checklist that I couldn't take it seriously. So, of course, he's going to be the brooding, hot billionaire who doesn't want anything to do with relationships. And, of course, she's going to be the cute, quirky, clumsy girl who doesn't know how cute she is. And she's going to get all these great opportunities. And she's the sunshine to his grumpy. And it was almost comical how those characteristics were there. So I had a hard time with that. And then there was a certain scene in here where I said, I cannot do this anymore. And I talk about that more in my spoiler one. So I'm going to send this to my friend Candace, who read this on her Kindle and absolutely loved it. And she wants a physical copy. So she is getting mine. But no, I do not plan to read the other 2 books. I know that a bunch of you have said like the other 2 books are better. I don't care. I don't want it. Okay, and then the last one that I DNF'd, I tried, you guys. I picked up 3 Wishes by Liam Moriarty, and this was sent to me from Krista from our Christmas book exchange a couple years ago, actually. And this was on my wish list at the time. And so I did, I went through a phase where I really wanted to read all of Liam Moriarty's books, and that's why it was on there. I have since decided to break up with Liam Moriarty, and this one definitely solidified that. I was still going to give this one a shot because it was sent to me. And I tried. I started listening to it. It is read by Heather Wilds, the audiobook. And while she was a great narrator, I could not stand these characters. I could not stand them. And I, to the point where I said, I cannot listen to a full book of these characters. They are so bad. They were awful. They're triplets, and they were awful to each other. And I mean, not awful in a delicious, fun way, awful to, why are you this way? It just seemed like toxic to just be toxic. And I don't know. I couldn't do it. I really couldn't do it. So it solidified that I don't want to read Liam Moriarty anymore, and that's fine. I had already kind of made that decision. I was just going to give this one a shot, but I did. So I'm going to pass this one on. Okay, guys, those are the 8 books that I read and 2 books that I DNF'd in June. Let me know your thoughts. And check out any of my other videos down below if you guys want a little bit more about some of these books. But yeah, let me know how your June reading went, and I will see you guys again soon. Hope you have a good day. Bye.